Hello and welcome to another episode of the Aardvark Swift podcast. I'm James Bowers and I'm part of the marketing team here at Aardvark Swift. Throughout this series, we chat to game studios, initiatives and industry professionals about all things video games, from tips on how to get into this line of work to studio cultures and projects to get involved in. This month, I spoke to studio community manager at Deep Silver Dambuster, Toby Gallagher. We talk about the skills needed to be a community manager, his transition into the industry, and how impressed he's been by the Dambuster Studios team. Your specific role at Deep Silver Dambuster is studio community manager. What does that role involve, and what does a general day look like for you?
So it's interesting. It's a bit of a hybrid role, to be honest. I think when people hear community manager, they think that I'm mainly kind of talking to, players and that kind of stuff. But I'd say day to day, a lot of emails, obviously, which I'm sure you have too. I run the social channels. So whether that's, like I said, interacting with players, answering questions, that kind of stuff, or scheduling our own posts, for our own social media activity. I've usually got some kind of written work going on, whether that's like writing a little spotlight article like the one I did for you guys the other day, or any other type of thing, maybe like a blog or a piece of content. I manage our kind of external partnerships. So again, like yourselves or Grads in Games or Into Games that we've been working with quite a lot recently. So there's usually things to deliver on that side of things. Chasing people around, which I'm sure you do a lot of too. Yeah. And also being chased sometimes, I've got to admit to that too. And also, I manage and update our website and that kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of like digital marketing stuff thrown in there as well, I suppose. And yeah, some of the PR kind of stuff. So I guess I act as the voice of the studio almost to the players, but I'm also kind of the middleman between our studio and the communications team at Deep Silver. So I'm kind of that middleman in between there.
That makes sense. And how long have you been at the studio?
So it's a funny one, this. So I've been with the studio for 8 months, but I was with the studio for about 2 weeks, actually in the studio before we went fully working from home. So yeah, 8 months, but I've only ever spent 2 weeks actually inside the studio.
I bet that was a bit of a trial by fire.
Yeah, it was an interesting one to say the least, yeah.
When did you first sort of become interested in working in games? I can see your history, like academically, is quite film orientated.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, if I start from the start, I guess I've always been interested in games, for as long as I can imagine. They've always been a constant in my life. I think the moment where I realized that I like games more than just something that I play was like when I got my first Xbox, and it was my first ever console. And ever since then, like I said, I've always been a constant in my life. But when I left university, took up like some writing jobs. And I worked at several different marketing companies, helping market technology like fintech, that kind of stuff. And they were cool jobs and I enjoyed them, but I realized I wasn't passionate about them. Games had always been something that interested me. And I thought, one of the only things that I'm ever going to be able to have that, amount of passion and just it comes so naturally to me would be something like games or even films, I suppose. But I would say games has probably been more of a constant in my life. So it just seemed like a natural idea. So I started researching, what kind of roles are there in the games industry that I could look at, which, I could transfer my skills over to. And obviously marketing and community just seemed like a natural fit.
Yeah, definitely. So is that how you first sort of got your break in the industry? Is Deep Silver your first role?
Yeah, so Dambuster Studios, is my first role actually in the industry. But I will say, I got rejected a lot from other games companies. Some, they didn't even reply to my application type of thing. Some I got, to the final stage of the interviews. They turned around and said, we love you. We think, your skills are great. We know you could do the job, but you just don't have this open quotes games industry experience that we're looking for. And it's one of those, scenarios where you can't get experience. You can't get a job without the experience. So yeah, I guess Rob, Helen and Emma at Dambuster, they just saw some potential in me and gave me the job and that's it. But yeah, a lot of rejection on that road.
What was it that attracted you to your specific discipline? So what is it about marketing for you?
I guess it's, the ability to be creative when you go to work every day. I love the opportunity to communicate directly with, people that experience the product. So in the past, it was obviously, working at fintech companies, maybe someone who uses our financial system. But when you go to, the games industry, it's people who are, actually playing the game. That's always kind of interested me. Yeah. So I guess that's what attracted me to that. I was always kind of into writing and that kind of stuff. So again, it just seemed like a natural fit.
If someone was going for sort of a job like yours, what would help an applicant stand out? What kind of sort of skills, software, and just general competencies factor into your role?
I would say, being a great communicator is probably the most important thing. knowing how to change the tone of voice that you use and that kind of stuff to address certain audiences. Being empathetic is really important. You will get people who, maybe tweet or send you messages on social media, a bit frustrated about things and whatever. And, you can't blow up back at those people and have the same kind of reply. You need to be empathetic and, understand that a lot of the time it comes from a place of passion. This person's so invested and interested in what you're doing that maybe it's not coming across in the best way. So yeah, you've got to be empathetic and understand people. Yeah, I guess I would say they're the main important skills, and they're very much soft skills. They're not like hard skills that you need to learn necessarily. Software competencies, I would say probably just Microsoft Word and Excel, and maybe like social media scheduling software, the things that I would say you need to know how to use. Things that might make your life a bit easier, if you could do, I don't know, a little bit of graphic design, but even then you can do that on, things like Canva nowadays, which make that sort of stuff, super easy. Oh, and project management software like Trello, just because it helps you, keep up to date with what you're doing and just stay focused. People from all sort of walks of life work in community. I know people who, started off working in game stores and, game station, if you remember that. I know people who worked in, customer service roles and transitioned into community. And I think a lot of people are suited to this type of role.
I realise working sort of in studio, it's probably a learning curve every day. But what one bit of advice do you wish you'd have known before starting?
That's a difficult one, I don't really know, to be honest. I could tell you what one bit of advice I would give to someone when they start looking for a job, probably. And I'm going to completely contradict myself now because I hate it when people say this, but get comfortable with rejection because we're human beings. We don't like being rejected. It's just not something we enjoy. But I'll tell you a little bit of an anecdote here, and I'll probably go off in a bit of a tangent. But the worst interview I've ever had in my life, I went for this writing job at like a tech firm a few years ago, and before then, I used to get like really upset and take rejection. If I got to the interview stage and got rejected, I'd take it really personally. And this guy who interviewed me was horrible. He made fun of my degree and
Oh, wow.
he joked about the fact that I got a 2-2. He said, "Oh, you got a Desmond." That was the first thing he said to me. But he said something to me, and he wasn't trying to be nice when he said this, by the way. But he said to me, "He's like, I know you can do this job, but I've got 40 other people coming here who can do this job." That kind of just made me realize that, if you do get to the interview stage, that person's invited you there because they know you can do the job. And if you start to think about it like that, and every time you go for an interview, you kind of think about it more as, it's not a case of if you get the job, it's a case of when. So if you go to enough of these interviews, you will eventually get a role. You just got to sometimes trudge on through and go to enough of them. That's the thing that I wish I knew when I first started applying for jobs, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it, actually. It's just, in person, it's more just crossing off those soft skills because they kind of already, I'm digging a little bit more into your experience because they already know you can probably do it.
They wouldn't invite you there at the end of the day if they didn't think you could do it. And sometimes it's, just the fact that this person has this one extra piece of, experience or skill or whatever, or, just the person interviewing you has their own kind of, I don't know, biases and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I feel like if you think about it like that, I'm not saying it becomes any easier being rejected, but it might make it a bit easier to, just keep on applying. And I think you've got to bear in mind that, community and marketing roles in the games industry are really sought after.
Yeah.
And sometimes there can be hundreds of people that apply for one role. And that's not me trying to put people off, but it's like, I'm just saying you need to kind of just keep on going.
I've heard sort of anecdotally about certain
Yeah.
roles in community management and junior narrative design. For
Yes.
roles at biggish studios, it's about 400 applications each, sometimes. I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
damn.
We had a junior narrative designer role go up recently, and we had to take it down off the website after like a few days because we just had so many applicants.
I can imagine.
Crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
Bit of a different question. If you weren't working in your current role, it doesn't even have to be inside games. What do you think you'd be doing?
Yes. So the glamorous answer is something that we just mentioned then, maybe like narrative in games or something like that. Because I've always been a bit of a storyteller and always like writing and that kind of stuff. When I was
Yeah.
at university, I wrote a lot of screenplays and that kind of stuff. And in my master's degree, I did a module which was in like game writing and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a glamorous answer. But the real answer is I'd probably just be working at a tech firm doing their marketing or something like that. Maybe like a content marketing manager eventually or something like that, or product marketing. Probably the more realistic answer.
Obviously, working from home, the games industry is mostly business as usual, which is quite nice for us, not so much for the rest of the sort of sectors. But projects have been able to carry on. You said yourself that you'd been in the studio for about 2 weeks before this all came about. So what would you say has been the best project you've worked on as part of Dambuster?
Oh, that is a great question. We've published a lot of great content, I think, and that's not me tooting my own horn. It's because I've had such good interaction from people in the studio. My favorite piece is a piece that I was completely hands off with, and Ryan from our audio department wrote it. And he kind of told the story of when the audio team went to some spooky locations in Nottingham a month or two ago to record sound. They went to the Galleries of Justice and the Nottingham Caves, and he wrote this awesome piece, which, kind of details what they were getting up to, how they recorded sound. It was really insightful and there was lots of great puns in there. So yeah, I think that's my favorite piece. We've also published some pieces of content which are all like about how to get roles in the industry. So we might not always have, a job to offer people who are trying to get into the industry, but still want to offer them some advice. So I don't know if you've seen them, but we've got one that's about like how to get a job in game art, how to get a job in game audio, what kind of person's suited to working in games production. And then Khan, our lead narrative designer, she adapted one of her talks that she gave at GDC a few years ago, which is about how to transfer into narrative design. I think they've been really cool. And another thing, I know you asked for one. I like some of the stuff we've been doing within two games recently. I know you're familiar with because they were on your podcast the other week, weren't they?
Yeah,
Cool.
Brandon and Millicent are really good to talk
Yeah,
to.
they're really cool. Yeah, we've done like some Twitter Q&As with those guys recently, and they've had some really good engagement. So probably put that there as well.
And what would you say is, this is a tough one as well, what would you say is your overall career highlight?
Oh gosh. Oh, I don't know. About a month or two ago, myself and a few people from the studio, we got involved with a charity. Do you know Everyone Can at all?
No, I'm not familiar actually.
So they help like disabled people with assistive technology, and they
All
run
right.
these gaming sessions for young people with disabilities and that kind of stuff. And they do this annual fundraiser called Game Together, where people stream and raise money for them. And myself and a few people from the studio got involved, and we raised a decent amount of money for those guys. And I know that the charity overall that day, I think they made about £12,000 or something like that. And I got to go down to the centre and interact with some of the kids on the day, so that was really nice.
Yeah, that's a really nice one. And I know you've not got much to compare it to Dambuster, but how have you found transitioning to work from home, or is that something you already experienced with?
So I'd done it in a limited capacity at other jobs, so it was like maybe a week from home or something, because I don't know, the office was getting refurbed or something like that, or
Yeah.
I just requested a day from home because maybe I had a doctor's appointment or something like that. So it wasn't a huge transition. I know for some people that never worked from home in their life, so maybe it was a bit more, yeah, of a transition for them. I think it's okay. It's okay for me. A lot of the tools I need and so on are just on my laptop, Word, Excel, and stuff like that. The IT team where we work, and the producers, the production team, all that kind of stuff, they did such an amazing job of getting everyone home and set up with everything they need. So I think everyone's pretty comfortable working at full capacity. So
Oh, that's good to hear. Speaking of studio, so moving on to a bit more
yes.
studio-specific questions. For Dambuster, what has been sort of the general studio history/founding?
Good question. So, I mean, if you go to previous identities, it was originally Free Radical Design, founded in 1999 by some ex-Rare employees, and obviously they worked on games like Time Splitters, which
Yeah.
I know you're a fan of. I've seen on your Twitter. But my favorite game actually by them was Second Sight.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that game's amazing. Yeah, maybe overshadowed a little bit by Time Splitters sometimes. So it was Free Radical until 2009, when the studio was bought by Crytek and it became Crytek UK. And then the team worked on some of the installments in the Crisis series, which is really cool. Warface, which was like a multiplayer, I think it's free to play kind of shooter type thing. Rise, Son of Rome, which was like one of the Xbox One launch titles. And then, yeah, in 2014, the studio got bought by its now owners, which is Deep Silver. And under Deep Silver, we've worked on Homefront: The Revolution, came out in 2016, and there was some subsequent DLC packages, and it's all about Dead Island now.
Yeah, makes sense. So, what would you say as Dambuster makes the studio stand out compared to your peers?
So let me think about this. I guess from the very moment that I applied for the job, something that stood out to me was like how much they want you to succeed and how much they're willing to invest time and effort into making people succeed. So I guess like when I first got the interview request, the first thing that stood out to me was they were like, "Oh yeah, come down. We'll pay you train fares. We'll put you in a hotel the night before." And I was just like, I've never heard of any employer doing that. So that just kind of blew my mind. And then when I got offered the job, they offered me so much help and assistance in, moving to Nottingham and that type of thing, helped me with my deposit, said if you need a bit of time off to go and do this and that, then that's absolutely fine. Put me up in the studio apartment for 2 weeks. Oh
And
yeah, they have an apartment which if anyone starts and they need to move to the area and look for like apartments and things, they'll
Yeah.
put them up in that for a couple of weeks, which
That's
is
a clever way of
amazing.
doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I've never heard of that before either. They just really want you to succeed, and they invest a lot of not just money, it's like time as well. So there's lots of, encouragement for people to learn new things. I know that like the engineering department, I think every other Wednesday afternoon is like a learning development time where they're allowed to explore and work on something that they're just interested in, and they
Yeah.
think, they might be able to transfer over to work one day. It's not necessarily like on their task list. They also give like talks to each other about subjects and that type of stuff. And then we've got our learning development officer, which is Emma. She's always putting these really informative and useful training programs together for people. So yeah, there's a lot of investment in people, which I think is amazing. And then yeah, just how helpful people are. Like I guess how I've already said, but like with getting people settled from working from home, that was just kind of like amazing. The second week I was there, like how much everybody banded together. Rob, who's like, I guess, our studio head, our studio development director, he was like driving to people's houses, dropping off, computers and things like that. There's no egos kind of in the studio. Anyone in the studio, I think, could ask Rob for a meeting and he would be absolutely fine with it. He'd always give them the time of day, whereas, I know some companies, the CEO, you never see them get an email off them, and it's usually when they're annoyed at you about something. That's some of the things that stand out. There's so many more.
I mean, we might have already covered this with that sort of
Mm.
answer, but yeah, anything else you want to add in terms of how you describe the culture at Dambuster?
What strikes me about it is it's tight knit, but it's like everybody's welcome to be part of that tight knitness. I mean, there is literally a knitting club, which I can't remember how often they meet, but there's like a lunchtime knitting club. There's a board game club. People play like D&D, I think, that type of stuff. On Fridays, we've got a virtual pub in the afternoon. I think we've got like a channel on our instant messaging service, Mattermost, for that. And I think people get added to that before they even get added to the ones that are anything to do with work. We put activities on, like we did a best dressed and pumpkin carving thing for Halloween. We got some great participation, and the people that didn't participate still came and had a look at everything people were doing. Everyone's really involved, which is super nice.
Oh, that's good. Sort of makes people, when they first start, feel sort of immediately welcome, which is nice. It kind of puts you at ease, doesn't it? Because I know when you first start anywhere, it's
Yeah.
very, oh, God.
I guess for me as well, like having worked in other content roles at other companies, I've had to like literally chase people around the office, like, "Hi, can you come and do this blog with me? Hi, can you, do this?" And the
Yeah.
people who, I need the knowledge of are trying to actively avoid me. Whereas like at Dambuster, sometimes, people will message me like, "Hi, can we do this, please? Like, we should do this." Coming to me with ideas, not like you're not having to twist people's arm to participate. I guess that's what strikes me as well about the place in terms of how my job fits in. People actually want to engage with me, which is refreshing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I suppose it's quite nice that, like you were saying, your favourite project has been the audio article, which I did see actually. It's quite nice that you don't have to try and get people in the studio to buy into what you're doing. They already want to do it.
I think people are just really like passionate and proud about the work that they're doing. So naturally, they want as many opportunities to talk about it as possible. And at the minute, we can't really talk about a great deal. So it's, if they get that slight opportunity, they're jumping on it. Yeah, let's do it. Do you know what I mean? And I think
Yeah,
as well, they're just like helping me out,
which is nice of them, yeah.
which is nice of them. Yeah.
So, in your role, have you been involved in the sort of hiring process at all?
So I'm involved kind of in like the recruitment advertising, obviously. I know a little bit about the hiring process, so if you've got any questions.
Having gone
Mm,
through the process and been sort of involved in recruitment on the periphery, what at Dambuster do the sort of I know it'll differ by role and seniority, but what are the
yes.
sort of general stages and tests of a candidate coming in?
Right, that's a very good question. And now I'm going to hit you with the it depends on the role. But
Yeah.
it's a really difficult one to answer because it really does depend on the role. So, for example, like if you apply for an art role, you'll have to submit your portfolio, that type of stuff. I think you might have to do an art test. I'm not sure. I might be completely lying there. But like for programming, that kind of stuff, you will need to do some kind of programming test, to make sure, obviously you can do the work and do it in a suitable time frame.
Yeah.
So it does depend between roles, unfortunately. I can't
Yeah.
shed a great deal of light there. But what I can say is obviously I submitted my CV and cover letter. I went for the interview, did like a short presentation, and they said to me on the spot, we don't want to mess you around, so we're not going to call you back here unless for a second interview, because they knew obviously we had to travel together. So they said we're not going to make you come all the way back here unless it's really neck and neck with somebody else. and it wasn't. Well, I mean, I don't know. So that was nice because obviously they considered me and my time before their need to do a second interview and that type of stuff. So yeah, that was really nice.
Yeah, that is quite nice. Like we say, it depends on the role. But yeah, hearing sometimes with certain candidates having like 3-4 interviews just to make sure they've definitely got the right person, that's a lot of time to invest to then not get it. But yeah, that's quite good.
Yeah, I think if you're doing 4 interviews and maybe like you need to have a look at your interview process and have a look at the questions you're asking and the ways that you're trying to assess people, because you're taking up a lot of someone's time there, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Burnt out after 4 interviews if you don't get the job as well.
I would be. Definitely. So do Dambuster have a specific sort of graduate hiring scheme? Do you partner with any universities around by you?
So we've worked with the Nottingham universities quite a bit in the past. We've done some kind of outreach with other universities. I know the art team went to, might have been Leicester University or something like that, to go and do like portfolio reviews and that type of stuff. But I would say, this year, obviously we've partnered with Grads in Games. So we're really looking forward to getting involved. And I know this week, actually, we've got 2 of our team members from engineering giving 2 of the webinars. So Helen, our HR manager, she'll be putting an actual official graduate recruitment plan together. But for now, I guess the kind of work we're doing with Grads in Games is like what we're doing on the graduate side of things for now.
That's good. So we're kind of getting to the end of my interrogation.
Oh, no.
So kind of sort of closing questions. Obviously, it'll have to be NDA safe because we've already mentioned that we can't talk about a lot. But is there anything that you can say that's on the horizon for Dambusters?
I guess, yeah, a lot of it's NDA territory, and I'll kind of have to cut that bit short. Things that we're excited about working with Grads in Games, that's probably one of them.
That's nice of you to say.
Christmas is around the corner, I suppose. I might just have to leave that one.
That's fine.
Mainly blank.
No, it's totally fine. So is there anything that we've not covered that you'd like to sort of promote or talk about?
I gave a shout out to Everyone Can, didn't I? So I'd just like to say, anyone who's listening, go and have a look at that charity because they do some amazing stuff. We've got, quite a lot of vacancies at the studio at the minute in art, production, animation, engineering. So, please go and have a look at them if you get a chance. Yeah, I think that's about everything. The questions were really quite comprehensive and thorough. So I think you've got everything pretty much. It's just all that's left to say is, thank you for thinking I'm interested enough to come on the podcast. I've really enjoyed it.
It's all right. You're more than welcome. No. Historically, we've kind of focused more on, we're coming up to nearly sort of a year of recording the podcast because I started them last January. And yeah, we've kind of focused on sort of studio backstories and kind of like studio heads. But we obviously, being in recruitment, we want more of an employability slant to things and helping other people get into the industry. So yeah, speaking with people who are sort of notable in their roles is definitely something we want to do more of. So community management is something I'm interested in. So I was like, I think Toby might be interested in this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think with community management, some lasting advice is that I don't want to say everyone can do it, but there's a lot of transferable skill sets and there's a lot of types of people who I think would be very well suited to community management. So if people have an interest in it, absolutely explore it. Do you know what I mean? You definitely should, because the chances are, if it resonates with you, you have an interest in it, you would probably be quite good at
it. Thank you for listening to the Aardvark Swift podcast. This episode was recorded, hosted, produced and edited by me, James Bowers. If you have any comments or suggestions for the podcast, or if you'd like to feature on a future episode, please email james.b@aswift.com. Special thanks go out to Toby Gallagher again for spending time with me. If you're looking to break into video games or transition to a new role, be sure to check out the Aardvark Swift site at aswift.com. We have hundreds of industry vacancies at studios both at home and abroad, and we also have tips and guides on how to really stand out in your application, from CV writing tips, portfolio reviews, and much more. Be sure to follow us across social media for the latest news and roles. You can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook under our handle @Aardvark Swift. We also have a behind-the-scenes Instagram account where you can see what we get up to and what it's like to work here at Life at Aardvark. The music in this episode is from Incomputech by Kevin McLeod. To learn more, visit incomputech.com.